I think I'm a bit stiff standing up. I would like to thank each and every one of you for the constructive contributions. There was 51, and it was probably one of, I think it was an excellent debate from the point of view. So many people came in, 51 speakers, which is really a lot, to just talk about the important issue of youth mental health. And I have listened closely. To what has been said this evening. I've taken copious notes, and I will continue to work closely with all sides of the House to ensure developments and improvements in the delivery of our child and youth mental health services. As I have indicated on many occasions since becoming Minister, protecting the mental health of all our population, including young people, has never been more critical. To achieve this and to effectively meet the mental health needs of all children and young people in Ireland, fundamental reforms are needed in many areas of mental health services delivery. Unfortunately, the report published today shows that despite the progress of recent years, our services failed our children and young people in Kerry, with serious impacts on them, their families and their communities. And as I said, my thoughts are with those children, those young people and their families. Through hearing each of the deputies' contributions, I know that you all feel for these families too. The systematic failings in their care is devastating and completely unacceptable. All measures will be taken to ensure that such an extreme failure, which occurred at multiple levels of the system over a protracted period of time, does not happen again. And I would take this opportunity to again stress that any young people, any young person who have concerns should seek help without delay. Our wide range of care services do provide help. They make a real difference to many young people day in and day out. A couple of deputies raised the issue in relation to the recommendations. There was 35 of them. And I read the report myself Sunday evening. I received a copy of it around 6 o'clock Sunday evening. And I read the report Sunday. And I read the report again Monday, the full report. And then I read all the subsequent, I suppose, shorter versions of it. And there are 35 recommendations. So just to update the House, so there's 6 of the recommendations are complete. 13 of them are in progress and 16 of them have yet to commence. Some of them are more long-term recommendations, and we're looking at, for example, whether CAMs and children and young people who receive supports for mental illness, that it should be aged up to 25 like it is with Jigsaw. And that's something the National Implementation Monitoring Committee has put in place, is a subcommittee on CAMs, and that is one thing that we are looking at. I'm not convinced myself it should be 25. I think we should look at all ages, 21, 23 and 25. And I do believe there should be, I'm open to be persuaded, I will say that, but I do believe that for a young person at 18 who might be in the care of CAMs for 5 or 6 years, at a time when they're going on maybe to college, doing their leaving cert, the transfer over is very, very traumatic. And I certainly believe at those ages of 18, 19, 20, I would like to see people have the option of being able to stay within the CAMs services. So that's where we are in relation to that. Several people raised here in relation to my call for the reinstatement of a HSE National Director for Mental Health in line with our programme for government. And I do believe this post is essential in driving the fundamental reforms needed across our mental health service, and not least in our child and youth mental health service. And to be frank and to be honest, to date, I have been unsuccessful in reinstating this post. But I do have the support of Minister Donnelly and the Taoiseach. I discussed it with them again last night. And I welcome across all the House that everybody seems to be in agreement. And any support, as I said, that you can give me in relation to this and for raising the issue, I would appreciate it. I do think it's extremely important at a time when mental health is probably one of the words most used during the pandemic, apart from vaccine. I think mental health might have been the second most used word, and especially in relation to young people. And I do think that having a National Director for Mental Health would send out a clear signal, and I think now is the best time for us to do that. A couple of I won't be able to touch on everything, but I'll try and do some of them. So in relation to, for example, eating disorders comes up constantly, and I suppose our clinical programme for eating disorders was launched in 2018. But the rise in cases in the last couple of years has been absolutely significant. So I have put more funding into eating disorders in the last 2 years than any other clinical programme. And by the end of this year, we should have 10 teams in place. Now, we started from a very low base of 3 teams. We should have 10 at the end. But I won't say there's not an issue with recruitment, because there is. But, you know, the funding is there, the posts are funded, and that's the important thing. In relation to bed capacity for young people, so we have Aisling and Cork, where we have 16 beds. We have Merlin Park in Galway, where we have 20 beds. We have Lindara in West Dublin. We have 24 beds, 22 and 2 high observation beds. And then we have St. Joseph's Fairview. I've visited all of these, and we have 12 beds there. So we have 70 beds plus 2 high observation beds. And in fairness, a lot of these beds are specific for young people with eating disorders. One of the issues that was raised quite a bit, and Deputy Dillon raises it constantly with me in relation to Pathfinder. And I have to say the implementation of the Pathfinder project is a priority for me, and I will continue to keep this matter under close review. It has stalled. It has stalled over the last few years. It has stalled because of COVID, but now I think it's a really good time to put the pressure on. And, you know, there's quite a bit involved, because it's the Department of Health, the Department of Education, the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth. And coupled with that, there is a significant budgetary involved, and significant admin, governance and legal arrangements will have to be put in place. But you have to start someplace. So I do believe, you know, in light of so many calls for the Pathfinder project to be put in place, I think now is a really, really good time to start working on it. In relation to the mental health legislation, and there has been a couple of issues raised about it, no legislation when it starts is perfect, and that's why it goes in for pre-leg scrutiny, and that's why it will come before the Dáil and the Seanad, and it will come before committee, and there will be amendments put down, and I will be open to amendments when they are put down. And, you know, this piece of legislation is a long time in the making, and I'm delighted to say that the Attorney General last week, 2 drafters were put in place to draft the legislation. It is a priority of mine. Unlikely that I'll get it in before Easter, but it'll certainly be in the next term. A huge amount of work going into it. I know the issue was raised in the Health Committee during the week about the admissions of young people. But I have to say again that there are occasions when sometimes you could have a male aged 17 and a half, and he might be suffering from psychosis. And we actually had a case, a case, and the person was in a very rural county up in Donegal. And for his own safety, it was decided that he would be admitted to an adult facility for 24 hours because he needed to sleep. And then he was brought to Merlin Park. And sometimes there are clinical decisions made because you can't have an inpatient facility everywhere. We do have 56 departments of psychiatry throughout the country, but sometimes it's not always possible because, as I said, we have 4 inpatient units for under 18s in the country. And sometimes there's capacity issues, not always, but sometimes the decision is taken purely from a medical or a clinical point of view by the consultant psychiatrist. And my fears is that if we close the gap completely, it might have a detrimental effect to a person. Now, I don't want to see any child, teenager or young person going into an adult mental health facility. And I am happy that we are coming in the right direction, you know. But if you were to ask me, could I stand here and say that no young person or no adolescent will ever be admitted into a mental health adult facility again at the moment? I couldn't say no. Because when I'm not a clinician, I'm not a consultant psychiatrist, and when a psychiatrist takes this decision, Cathaoirleach, you know, I'm not in a position to overrule that because it's done for the best interest of the patient. But that's something we'll tease out when the time comes, and we'll discuss at committee, and you know, and we can discuss all that. So a lot of work being done in relation to that. I suppose I think today has been a bit of how will I put it, it has been a kind of nearly a watershed in relation to learning the failures down in Kerry, and everybody is very upset and distressed. But I do think this was a really good debate tonight. I think people were very respectful, people were very open, and they've all had their say. I've listened intently, and I'm happy to discuss any of the issues again. Gorv Mahagut.
Thank you very much.